Hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video I'll be talking about the Fuji X-t20. This camera has a special place in my heart because I first started Fuji with the Fuji X-t20. And yes, I'm mainly a Canon shooter. I come from the Canon, Nikon background with some Panasonic background as well, but in this video I'll be talking more about the experience side of this camera, in terms of photography, videography, the operational side of things, and what I think about it. This is not really a review video per se, but rather a video about this camera based on my experience. And you're watching this video from this camera, by the way, because I'm using this camera to actually film this video right now with the 16mm f1.4. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So I would like to first talk about the actual operational side of this camera. So the operational side of this camera, I really love how this camera really feels really nice and, well, pretty much really nice to work with and really nice in the hand. Everything is very tactile. I specifically love the shutter button. Not only the fact that you can actually add a red or some sort of shutter button on the button, but you can also add other accessories like remote control kind of thing, not wireless, but like a cable remote release, shutter release cable into that screw-on shutter button, as well as the actual shutter mechanism. When you press the shutter button, it's really nice. And I also like the tactile feeling of the dial, though I hate the on-off switch button because a lot of times I actually accidentally switch the button on while maybe riding my bike, having the camera strapped to the side of me while riding my bike or walking. So sometimes I actually get home and figured out that the camera has been clicking shutter every single meter or two, whether I bike home or actually walk home, and then I end up having loads of images from like the location I start biking or walking from all the way to my place, vice versa. So yeah, that's the only downside. And another nice operational side is the touch screen. I really like the tap to focus and everything. A lot of times I find it so much easier to use than, well, not easier, but more convenient and practical to use when compared to using the joystick on my X-t2, because my X-t2 does not have touch screen. Bummer. Anyway, but I also find it also to be the downside on the display part, because the display is not as sharp as my X-t2. So sometimes coming from the X-t2 or even the X-t1, I thought my images are not in focus, but actually they are, just the screen is not that sharp to really make it look like it's in focus. But if you're coming from the X-t10 going on to the X-t2, or having used the X-t10 to the X-t20, or haven't started using the X-t20 or been using the X-t20 for a while, you might not really see whether it's out of focus or not. But if you're coming if you're coming from let's say X-t1, X-t2, X-t3, you'll find that the display on the X-t20 is slightly soft, but the color is still accurate and everything, so that's pretty much a good sign. I also liked the actual dials on top, the drive dial especially, because it's so much faster to use than the drive dial here that they have on the X-t2, X-t3, X-t1, and I think X-t4 as well. So yeah, there's that, because these dials, it's very clunky and the switch is very thin and everything, and on the X-t20 it's right up here, it's all in big letter and you can just switch it. And there's also the internal flash on the camera itself, which is very nice if you need, spontaneously need certain fill flash. So there's that. Though the flash doesn't rise up very far, so this means that the red eye is going to be more apparent if you're taking indoor portraits where the person is probably very close to the camera. So there's the downside right there. But anyway, let's move to another point, which is the port. I really don't like the microphone port because, well, I'm sure you heard a lot of complaints about this. You need an adapter from 2.5 to 3.5 jack. So that's really something that you have to keep in mind when you're traveling with this camera and with other camera system as well. Because for me, if I'm traveling with other camera system, it's the last thing that I have in my mind. And sometimes when it is the first thing I have in my mind to bring the adapter, I don't know where it is, because sometimes it's pretty much lost in my room, because I don't have the same microphone, like the duplicates of the same microphone specifically just for the x-t20. I do switch out microphones here and there, and sometimes I'm not as organized by leaving certain adapters here, adapters there, and doing a lot of studio work as well. I do have adapters mixed up together with other adapters that looks very similar. So yes, I have to get organized for that, but just to think to have an adapter just for one camera is also a little bit frustrating. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Anyway, let's go to other positive side of things then. So I really love how the camera operates in terms of like the dial on the back, the buttons on the back. Well, this is X-T2, but X-T20 is right there, and it's very similar in the way that I can program any button on the back to work as I set it to. So you can be picking up another X-T20 and it will work slightly differently, simply because that person might have their settings dial into those buttons the way I like it, the way they like it. Like if you want to set your ISO button to this button and your wireless button to this button, but some other people might set their wireless button to this button and their ISO button to this button, or electronic button to this button, something like that. So it's a really customizable, friendly camera to use. Talking about customizable now is a little bit negative thing that it's kind of nitpicking, but it's about the menu system. It's not that it's hard and confusing, which it can be confusing if you're coming from a Canon cameras, but it's also frustrating in the way that like it doesn't remember the last position where you were in the menu. So every time you press the menu, go into the menu, you have to start like from the very beginning of the menu again, which is very frustrating if you're, for example, only going to be using video menu or photography menu, or even certain photography menu within the menu. Sometimes you can just, like with the Canon, you can just get right into that menu, whereas with this one you have to start from the beginning and then go down to that menu, which can be very time consuming with the X-T20 and other Fuji system cameras. But yeah, that's pretty much it kind of thing, what I like about it and what I really don't like about it generally. But otherwise, I really like the form factor. I really like the color science out of the X-T20. I still prefer Canon, but it's also really, really great. And the raw files coming out of the X-T20 is great. I'll talk about that more into the photography side. Let's hit a little bit on the video side. Right now you're watching me filming with the X-T20, well, through the X-T20, and it is actually great. The video quality is great. I can't really see too much of a difference between the X-T2 and the X-T20, but it is definitely sharper than something like the older Canon cameras that I'm from, like if you're comparing it to like the M3, the M whatever, but it's kind of also on par with the 1080p from the M50 and the higher M cameras, so the more recently announced M cameras. So it's actually pretty sharp, but it offers slightly higher dynamic range if you want to extend the dynamic range of the camera. So that is really good, because the M cameras, Canon are not really serious with those cameras. They're more serious with the R cameras, and those definitely have higher dynamic range than the X-T cameras, that's for sure, when it comes to video. Especially with the log profile and everything, but at least according to what I use it for. Anyway, let's leave that aside. The actual video, like, usage, the autofocusing system is not so reliable. It hunts in and out several times. I have vlogged with this camera so many times, especially on my photo walk, when I take you guys out to do like night photography, things like that, cityscape photography. It keeps on going in and out of focus so many times, and it's just really frustrating, whether using in 4K or 1080p mode. In 1080p, it's supposed to be more reliable because it has the more reliable autofocusing system feature for 1080p versus 4K, which is only contrast detection. So there's that, but it is still nowhere as reliable as, let's say, the dual pixel autofocusing system or the Sony video autofocusing system. So Have to keep that in mind. But the color coming out of the Fuji is great. You can shoot different film simulations, or you can do simple color grading and color correcting, because the file is robust enough actually coming out of this camera. The bitrate might not be so high, but it's definitely high enough for things like Instagram, YouTube, social media. Of course, you cannot put it so extreme, but you're not buying this camera to push things very extreme, or else you would probably be looking at something like a Red camera or the older Canon cameras and put magic lanterns so that it records raw and then just shoot and edit everything to the extreme. There's that. For video side of things, for photography side of things, it's also very good. This camera, the photography side of things, it's very, very close to the X-T2. For some reason, maybe it's because I used Lightroom, but the raw files are not really as good as the X-T2, but very, very similar. If you print them side by side, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But I do notice that the white balance on the X-T20 does go off, like very off, more often than the X-T2 itself. So I find myself having to fix the white balance in post more often than shooting with the X-T2. But that's just, you know, a side thing. If you're just doing simple travel photography, indoor photography, things like that, keep it too simple, then it's still really, really, really great camera to go for. And for the reason that it's very responsive, it makes this camera a very reliable camera to shoot photo with, even if you're just starting out with photography. This camera is definitely a very good choice for also long-term investment into a photo camera, so you can't really go wrong. And also the choice of lenses for both photography and video, there are a lot of lens choices from Fuji, and unlike other system cameras like from Nikon, Canon, even Sony, there aren't a lot of good option for crop censored camera body like this, because those companies pay more attention to producing good lenses for their full frame cameras. With Fuji, whether it's photography or video, the lenses are so good. I'm not only talking about having nice low aperture lenses, but also having specifically engineered lenses for these crop censored cameras, because it's different from putting a full frame lens on a crop frame body, because a full frame lens, the glass is made for full frame, and if you put it on the crop frame, the resolution on the lens just get magnified by the actual resolution from the crop frame camera itself. So it's really nice that you can get a lot of good quality lenses for this system camera. Other than that, it will also give you really nice manual control, so you can put your strobe, remote control, whatever external flashes that you might have for your photography, things like that. A lot of photography features are really thought out with the actual X-T20, which is great. The only downside is that it's not weather sealed, but if you can live with that, then this camera is also a really, really nice camera to actually start out with. And nowadays, being only around 500 euros brand new, depending on where you get it, or like 450 euros secondhand, depending on where you get it, can be much lower, then you know, it's really a bargain to go for. The only downside with that is Fuji lenses are very, very expensive. For example, the Fuji 35mm f2, you're looking at around 400 euros or 450 euros. Whereas if you're starting with Canon, a 50mm lens, the not professional ones, you can get it for a really low price. And the 50mm 1.8 is about 100 euros. So yeah, of course the 1.8 is not weather sealed, and of course the 1.8 is a bit bigger, but it allows more light, and the glass on the 1.8 on the Canon side is also very, very, very sharp. So, you know, you're also buying into the actual design of the Fuji system. But overall, I think that the X-T20 is still a great camera to use, whether if you're coming from like a professional line, or if you're just starting out with a new system right now, or just starting out with photography and or filmmaking in general. The X-T20 is still a great camera to use even today. I think that the file, 24 megapixel raw file coming out of this camera, is great to edit with. And even if you don't edit a lot, the JPEG out of this camera is still great, and the film simulation, you might like it or you might hate it, but it's still great. The actual, you know, skin tone is also really, really nice on the Fuji system. Not as nice as Canon in my opinion, but it's still very, very nice. The video files you still can grade. You can just do some color correcting and color grading and everything. If you can live with the, you know, autofocusing system not being so accurate all the time, then yeah, it's still a really nice camera to use. And I actually would like to end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. If you noticed something changed, well, this is actually the next day of filming. Yesterday, my x-t20 ran like 3 batteries all the way through and also ran out of memory, and I didn't know about that until I finished filming, but I didn't take it into the computer right away. And I thought I finished filming, so I just turned off the off button and everything, and later in the evening only realized that, you know, the video got cut off. So yeah, that's the thing. I cannot see the display of the screen and everything. Anyway, there's so much more I'd like to talk about this camera, but I think for now this video is getting a bit too long. If you need a free photography guidebook, I'll have it linked down in the description below. It's absolutely for free. You don't need to send me your email or anything. I will not bombard you with newsletters. It's just absolutely for free. It's for beginners. And yeah, otherwise I thank you so much for watching again, and also stay safe, have a great time, and have fun shooting. Bye for now.